discuss it live. We'll go live. We are live. If you like droning on and on and on, and you like repetitive grooves, then you're gonna love HF Pod and Summer '99. That's what we're here to talk about today. Hey guys.
Speaking of droning on, I'm going to talk about my favorite camera shots of the year 1999. An excellent year in film, might I add. But no, I will not be doing that for you. We will just let Trey do that with his guitar.
But if you're watching live, we are gonna. I think if you stick around for the end of the episode, we're gonna do a bonus about our favorite book, movie, album of the year so far. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think we did this
Yeah.
like a month and a half ago, and we're gonna check in with where we're at today. It's great.
Awesome. I have to just say I'm wearing my new merch from Eggy, who I saw last night at Ardmore, and they're coming to you, Megan, today.
Yeah,
Really
I'll be
great.
there. Can't wait.
Really great. We talked about
That
this
was
a
a-
lot on our text chain, but Brian, they're like they're hitting a peak in terms of sound. The sound is so good. They sound great. They're playing great. It's really cool.
It is, and first and foremost, RJ did an incredible job in the interview.
Oh, thanks.
Secondly, before I get to the Eggy, happy fucking birthday! I hope you roll
Yeah.
up the biggest spliff, and I hope you don't pass it to no one. Little teaser for later in the episode, but I do.
Thank you.
No, but Eggy, like they played a really excellent second set last night. I think it was Finding and Losing, Backyard Bear. They played a song with Mark Brownstein. I'm blanking on it right now.
Let It Rock.
Let It Rock. Yeah, thank you. And then Burritos of Chavo was the encore. So the second set closer was Ricky Gervais. That's right.
Yes.
And everything was jamming, and it was killer jamming. And I texted you at one point, holy shit, Eggy has listened to Fish Mexico 2024, and they like what they heard. It's just like very Death March, synthy, very heavy, really, really good stuff.
Well,
I'm so excited to see them
yeah,
tonight.
I'm really, really happy for them. They're such good,
they're
good
awesome.
people. They were so, typically when I interview an artist, you guys know this, like you send, not necessarily send questions, but it's like, what do you want to talk about? Like whatever. And then some artists are just like, whatever, let's just see what happens. So that's what they did. So we just kind of went for it. It was really awesome. I do have to say just thank you to my daughter who's 10, Maya. I think she's watching. She made me breakfast this morning, and she made cheddar cheese and jalapeno pancakes with cream cheese on top.
Dude, that
What?
is
Yeah.
that is not just breakfast.
I
That
know.
is
Yeah,
that is
that
gourmet
is
pretty
cooking.
epic.
My
And
goodness.
scrambled eggs
Wow.
on the side. It was like pretty. I think we've crossed the
My
threshold where she's
God.
in charge of breakfast now.
Yeah, I think
That's
that-
incredible. This is going
Yeah.
to be her curse. You do something really well, you get stuck with it. That is
Yeah,
that
right.
is so nice.
Nobody can make it
Amazing,
like
Maya.
you.
Exactly.
And but a
Well,
few other
before
things.
we go on,
Okay, go
I
ahead.
just wanted to stop and say happy birthday to both of you.
Yes.
Because
Thank you.
there are just two people that I'd rather spend time with. And I just want to give everyone a little insight into who we are as a friend group. 5 minutes before we're going on to record this pod at 9:30 in the morning, which is 6:30 a.m. Brian's time, we are having a
7:30.
deep conversation about sobriety and choosing to drink or not. And this is like 3 minutes before we're about to record a podcast and talk for an hour and a half. We're just nonstop. I just adore you both so much. And I'm so inspired by both of you. And I'm so glad I get to be your friends. And happy birthday.
Share the sentiment. Thank you so much. You guys
Yeah.
are incredible people. I love
Yeah.
love hanging out with you guys. Love podcasting. Love competing in book reading and giving me movie recommendations and agreeing and disagreeing. I love disagreeing with you guys because you guys make it less pressure filled to disagree. It's not that like you have the wrong opinion or I have the wrong opinion or anybody. It's, hey, let's talk perspective. And that is something that is like very, very, very critical to me as a person. So thank you guys.
No, I appreciate you saying that, Megan, and happy belated birthday, Brian. This was a big week of birthdays. Like three or four of my close friends had birthdays this week, which is awesome.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know.
It's a good week.
That's I guess it's that summertime love that leads to these March birthdays or something.
Plus, well, I think everyone just wanted to be, all the moms out there wanted to have their feet up watching March Madness is what it really was.
True. That is all planned out.
That's it. That's it.
That's definitely it.
Super relaxing time for them.
I want to give a quick request out there to give us some reviews on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. We have a lot of reviews, but we haven't had one in a while, and I think it's because everyone just loves us so much that it's like, kind of understood. But we've been seeing you guys engage and send us emails and voicemails and show up on the live stream and listening. It's recognized. But go to Apple Podcasts or wherever you can leave a podcast review where you listen. We'd love more reviews. Speaking of reviews, the reviews are in, and Moment with Meg is an instant success.
She killed it.
Congrats.
She killed it, man.
Thanks,
you did such a good job. You're an absolute natural.
Tell us about it.
So much fun. Yeah, so if you haven't checked it out, you can check it out on my Instagram. Hopefully it'll go up on Osiris YouTube when I get my act together. Thank you, Brian. I really appreciate that. It is just a short little interview show I'm doing with musicians. I did Cal Kehoe last week. I'm going to do Eggy tonight. A lot more fun people kind of in the queue. I'm really excited to just chat with musicians and talk to them about what's going on for them musically and also just who they are outside of music. So if you have fun ideas for questions you want me to ask artists, message me, send them to me. I'd love to pass them on. And I really appreciate the support. It's been so much fun and just exciting to do something that I'm really passionate about.
I love the format. It's a great, it's for the modern times, which is great. We are here on HF Pod. I think we're not for the modern times. I think we're like, we're like 8 years behind the curve, but it's fun.
I was going to say a podcast that has taken the entire length of A Moment with Meg to get to the point of what we are supposed to be talking about in this podcast. We are a little bit behind the times, but we are who we are, and Meg gets to shine in her own way. She can bounce between the two of them. I could never do a 7-minute podcast because it takes me 7 minutes to formulate my thoughts.
That's true.
Well, it was supposed to be a 3-minute podcast, and then it became 7. But some things like HF Pod are timeless, and people want to see us go deep.
That's it. They want the context. Context, baby. Context.
Yeah, that's what they want.
Oh my God. It's so important. You got to have an hour of context before you say anything.
You can't talk about anything without it. Come on.
So I've spent the last 2 weeks preparing for this show, listening to Eggy, listening to new albums, and I have not yet listened to the Spectrum 97 release, which is the latest Phish archival release, and I can't wait to listen to it. I think I've seen a bunch of chatter out there, but this is like really giving summer 97 fall 97 its due. Have you guys listened to it yet?
No, I'm the same as you. It's on the queue for today because I've just been working to get ready for this week. Yeah.
Same.
It's really good. I think from a sonic standpoint, the one thing I will say is, and this is from my BTP co-host, Dave Goldstein, who noticed it first, they have mixed Fishman snare drums so well that you feel it kind of shaking in your bones. When he plays it, it just has this pop to it that is unlike anything I've heard on a previous recording. But I really appreciate it. I bought the CD copy as well. We listened to it on our drive this last week. We took a little trip with the kids, and they have the Mike's Groove on one CD, and it may be the best new Phish just disc that I own, because it's that Mike's simple Dogface Boy, Yamar, Weekapog. We're done. Get out. It's amazing. That's all I need to listen to over and over and over again. It's like the Live Phish 01 disc 2, where you had that second set from Big and Tim. Just perfect Phish, no skips. Once it's over, just let it play again, man.
Well, we're gonna have to, maybe next week we can do a quick group kind of review of it, if that makes sense.
Sure.
After we've had a chance to listen. Okay, so our Ev dude, who I know comments and watches quite a bit. Now let's stop beating around the bush. How TF? That means, actually, I'm not gonna say it because my kids might be watching. How TF is Summer 99 ranked so low? Okay, number 20 ranked by us, number 10 ranked by fans. So we're going to get into this. I just want to say that I listened to all 20 of these shows, which I don't always, but I got to not all the way through, but really got into this tour. And it's the 25th anniversary of this tour, first of all. And you know what's amazing to me about this tour is I'm not going to answer his question. How you listen to 99, you could imagine a situation where the band takes a break in 2000 and either doesn't come back at all or comes back for 2 years, and then Coventry is the last show they ever play. And like, who knows what happens? 99% of bands, that's what would have happened, right? They go their separate ways, something happens. But instead, we're looking back 25 years ago, 25 years later, and they're not just still out there. They're like innovating, and it's just like an insane thing to think about. But I don't go back to this tour very much. There are moments of, like I said last week, one of the jams of this tour, which we'll talk about, is one of my top 5 favorites. But I wonder why. I wonder if maybe what you were talking about last week, Megan, like this is the beginning of the end of 1.0, and you can kind of hear that. Like there's some melancholy, but I mean, it's like it's fun. There's a lot of fun. There's a lot of really nice music, but like it's also like, maybe that's why I don't go back to it. Maybe it's not why I don't think as highly of it, is because it is the beginning of the end of the era, which is not really fair because they play for another, year and a half. But I don't know, mentally, maybe that's why it's not ranked as highly for me personally. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, I think the fans had it at 10, probably because it's 1.0, and those years seem to be pretty overrated in the fan vote, but also because 99 is such a monumental year for the band. But if you look at the music in isolation, which I recognize we're not doing entirely, but just listening to the music on this tour compared to just listening to the music on the tours that we have in front of it, I think our ranking is totally justified. And these jams are super cool, but they can be similar. They're really hypnotic, like you were saying in the beginning, RJ. They're not as wildly interesting. And I also don't know if there's a real unified sound. Like towards the end of the tour, the jams become much different than in the beginning of the tour. And I think it's an important tour because the sound of 99 starts to form this summer. And it's the beginning of that peak that leads up to 12/31/99, which is totally a pinnacle of their career. So much so that they decide that basically because of the achievement of Big Cypress, they have to take a break. So this is the beginning of that. And it's also just hinting at the millennial sound that's going to come later in the year. It's not fully formed yet. So there's another tour later this year that I think is more important and more kind of representative of 99 and the sound that 99 is.
Yeah, I agree with everything you guys are saying. I think the only things I would add is this tour, I feel like, benefited greatly in the decade and a half after it happened to age, where Phish breaks up, comes back together. 2.0 is a pretty contentious period for most fans. And then they break up again. They come back in 3.0. And suddenly, where are the jams? That is the most noticeable thing missing in the early part of 3.0. And it all makes sense now. We get it. But at the time, it was like, well, I still want that aspect of Phish. And if you reach back immediately in history, the last period where they sounded still relatively tight and jamming with that kind of 1.0 sound that is not extremely effects heavy. It is much more reliant on communication, and kind of the only person really putting out effects are Trey. But it has like a sound that you can kind of find the early touch points all the way back even to 1993 is summer 1999. And so it's one of those tours that I remember as the band came back in 3.0, I listened to this all the time because it was like, if I want to hear Phish really dive deep, but not sound as muddled as they do in later parts of 2.0, 99 is where I'm going to go. And summer 99 is exactly. But that said, and we talked about this, and I think we'll get more into this, I think that reason is why it's rated as 10 by the fans. For us at 20, you have to look at what's happened over the last 10 years. This band has undergone so many changes and so many improvisational changes, and they have figured out this balance between, like, even in 2014, there was this question of can Phish jam heavily as a sober act? And now that is completely out the window. And over the last 5, 6, 7 years, I would argue they've played more interesting jams and more risky jams and more challenging jams than anything that they come close to in summer 1999. And so the tour, when you listen back to it as a whole piece, to me, falls down a little bit of a step because it is so one note. It is very arrogant, and not in the way that like 95 was, where the band was realizing like, holy shit, we're about to play MSG for 2 nights over New Year's Eve, or 97 where they reinvented their sound. It's kind of just arrogant because they're like, yeah, we're the fucking best. Like there's a cockiness to this tour that I think hasn't aged nearly as well. We'll get into more details, but that's kind of like broad picture of like where we have it right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you can hear the ups and downs of the lack of sobriety.
Yeah.
I'll just leave it there because my daughter Maya is watching. Hi Maya, thanks for the birthday wish.
Send it. Best tag. The best.
Okay. So
Love
I
it.
guess we should just get into the tour overview.
Sure.
I do want to say real quick that if you haven't seen the sheet that I created, which is not that complicated, but I have a Live Bait tracks organized by date spreadsheet, which you can find. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do a redirect right now. So if you go to osirispod.com/livebait, you can see this Google sheet. There are a ton of summer 99 releases on the Live Bait. 7-1, 7-8, 7-9, 7-12, 13, 15, 18, 20, and 24 all represented on Live Bait. So I went back and listened to a bunch of these after I listened to the audience recording. So there's a ton of really good stuff out there in terms of the releases. But we need more releases. But Megan, can you tell us first like what happened this tour?
Absolutely. In June, they released the Sick It disc, their 8th studio album. It's first going to be released through website mail order, and then Elektra is going to put it out the next year. They do Carrie Stock as kind of like a warm-up, private show, Jim Carrey in attendance. And they go to play their first public show, though, on June 30th. So there's 20 shows they're going to do for this tour. They're going to tour open in Kansas, and then they're going to go to the Southeast, up to the Northeast, go to upstate New York for Camp Oswego, a festival right in the middle of the tour. They're going to go to Toronto, Pennsylvania, and they're going to end in the Midwest, of course, with 2 nights at Deer Creek. And there are 97 jam chart entries on this tour.
A lot of them.
It's a lot.
A lot of jams.
97 jam chart entries for 20 shows, right?
Yeah, 20 shows. Yeah.
I mean, that's outrageous.
That's outrageous. That's like 5 a show.
We're gonna get into this because I think like some of the frees that are on there are like maybe one is enough. You know,
there's one really good one, one pretty good one, and then some like okay, it's 10 minutes of ba 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 ba. I do just want to note, is I think this ties in really well. Brian Tompkins, one of our most dedicated listeners, left this comment. Mastery has decreased the exploration that was necessary then to me, based on what I was saying, in learning to become efficient like they are now. I think that this is such a great way to frame this tour, because you have to remember these guys are like 34, 35 years old when this tour is happening. Like they're still relatively young. They are having a lot of fun on the road, almost too much fun. And, you know, this is the year that Trey starts the Tab project to get kind of ideas outside of Phish. Like they're trying to figure out what is going to happen in their career going forward. They've built all of this. They're about to play Big Cypress, but they couldn't possibly know what they know now based on what they've gone through. And so you hear that here, both in like the purity of being on top of the world, probably making more money than they'd ever made before, being able to just sell out amphitheaters on a whim around the country, draw 100,000 people down to Florida. But also there is a downside to that we don't, that we've gotten past now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay, let's get into it.
Yeah.
Megan, anything else to say before we start talking themes?
No, but that actually is kind of a good segue into the theme. A theme I wanted to talk about. I think that you really hear the band on this tour sound a little tired. And maybe it is from personal struggles. Maybe it's from that constant need for reinvention. Maybe from struggles within the power dynamics in the band. And maybe from like constantly going for so many years. But I hear the edges fraying a little bit here. And it's interesting because they know that they're about to embark on a year that's going to lead to their biggest accomplishment ever. They're going to have, the biggest concert on the continent this year. And that's just wild to think about. And they know that they're going to have to play all night. That they're starting to think about, how they can work towards that. But like you said, Brian, they're also having a ton of fun. And so they're not as disciplined as they are now. And I think that kind of devotion to evolution, it must get exhausting. And I feel like you can start to hear that in this tour. But you also start to hear kind of the building blocks of what makes 99 so amazing. You hear like the 97 funk with the 98 ambient jamming. And then you start to hear just like a little bit of them playing with the soundscapes that will become that millennial sound. But it is cool in these moments when it works so well and you hear them nail this jam that has kind of all three of those elements incorporated.
RJ, I'm curious your thoughts about that, because I have thoughts on something Meg said, but I want to hear what you think about the idea of like they've accomplished so much, they've been goal oriented, and now they're kind of just like being fish for fish. They have one more big goal to go after, but like, do you hear that? Do you feel that? Like, how does that sound to you?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's interesting. I feel like to me, the sound really vacillates between like fun and boring. Not boring. Boring is probably the wrong word. Fun and repetitive. Like I think they're having a ton of fun. There are these shows where it's just like clear. I mean, I'll talk about it a little bit later. Like Trey with his meat stick stuff is just like ridiculous. It's like a good representation of how he gets obsessed with a thing and then just like won't stop.
Right.
Yeah.
But it also sounds a little bit like, I don't know. When you were talking, it was reminding me of the conversation I had last night with Eggy, and I was asking them about like their sound evolution and the patience that I'm hearing in their music that I think has changed a lot over the past year. And they said they're just, kind of constantly trying to push themselves, not necessarily in that direction, but just constantly push themselves, which I think is what most of these successful bands are doing. Right. So like, but I feel like Trey is like maybe a little lost at this point, not lost, but musically, I don't think it's like a new journey. I think it's like just it's more about like fun, and then they're like doing Big Cypress. It's about the numbers and about putting on this huge thing and trying to get 50,000 people to do this dance, and like and then they end up in these amazing jams at times. But I don't think it's I don't think they're really pushing themselves sonically at this point. I think in December they start to sound different. Well,
yeah.
And just Larry says Camden Chalk Dust disagrees. One of my top 5 jams I will talk. I have a 5-minute soliloquy prepared on Camden Chalk Dust. So
yes,
that's an exception, but
Larry is 100% right, and I think that this is on the top 25 tours for a reason. It's a good tour. Like I think we're going to. I think we both, all three of us, as we were listening back to this, were like, maybe this isn't as like capital G great as I remember, like in my head being. And so there's an interesting topic to kind of dive into and discover. But at the same time, I think we all love a lot of the jams on this tour. And there are some huge high points. I'm going to talk about them as we get especially towards the back end. There's like a 4-show stretch that is, it's just gold. But I think you're right. Like my first note about this tour was what's on the other side of funk. And it's really hard to reinvent after the reinvention. You hear this big buildup in 93, 94, 95, these cacophonous, just maximalist, wild jams. We're going for 50 minutes and like none of it makes sense. It's just segments of noise and craziness. And it's all about them trying to figure out how far away from each other that we can be till we can connect with each other again. And all that kind of leads to 97, which is this total reinvention of the sound. This is a different sound from 97, but it is not an active reinvention. It's kind of the natural evolution of where funk takes you towards like minimalism, these kind of trancy grooves. And I think to your point, RJ, that doesn't require you really pushing yourself. They can kind of step up on stage and know no matter what we play, some song is going to let us tap into that groove, that kind of underlying almost like raga type of groove to the shows. And so it's more of like a Zen test of let's not try and let's just let it find ourselves. And so you get these like brilliant moments. Camden Chalk Dust Virginia Beach, Birds of a Feather, the My Left Toe from Burgettstown, et cetera, et cetera. There's many more to list, but you also get some pretty sterile set listing. A lot of jams that just like fade out into silence for like 6-7 minutes that I have to imagine in the audience was a bit, you had to employ some patience to really enjoy some of those. There's some very sloppy moments, things that we were not used to with Phish, aside from like, hey, it's a one-off show in Amsterdam. It's stuff that is going to start to rear its head as we move into 2.0. So you get these ups and downs. And I think like from a sound standpoint, like at a base level, it's this airy kind of churning jam fusion. You've got the rhythm held down, very solid foundation, and then Page and Trey are just like dancing over the top of it, and it kind of just grooves in a way that you don't really have to try to listen to it. It's not really challenging, but it's really enjoyable.
So I just want to pick up on that, and then Megan jump in, of course. I guess one thing we haven't talked about is so when they come out on 6:30, the first show, they haven't played together since the previous New Year's. I mean, besides the show you mentioned, Megan, the private show, but that Springs Tab tour, I mean, that was a monumental thing for Trey, and I think people still cite that as like the best solo Trey. So I feel like that, like the 6:30 show, they come out like sounding like they've been playing for a while, not sounding rusty, partially because Trey's just like he's on fire, but I feel like his fire kind of like slowly burns out over the course of the tour. Although, I mean, some of those later shows are amazing, but I just feel like he comes out on that 6:30 show in particular, and it's just like it's like Trey is just pushing forward. That Bathtub Gin is just like, it's really pretty awesome.
It's a great opening to the tour, and it's a great way to showcase where they are right off the gates. I think we also should note that this is the tour where they change the stage setup. So Trey moves into Mike's spot. Mike's moves center stage. Fishman moves kind of right behind Mike, a little bit off center, which everything I've read, the goal of that was to center the sound around the rhythm and then let Page and Trey kind of hang on top of the fray. It does seem, as we've heard, to have led to some intra-band issues, as Page felt like he was out of the conversation during the shows and was just kind of like playing catch up and going along. But I think you're absolutely right. Like, that gin really sets the tone for the tour and basically says, when we are on, you will hear it in our jams. And when everything clicks, it will happen in our jams.
Yeah, that's definitely a theme from this tour. They sound stronger when they're jamming than when they're playing composed songs, for sure.
Yeah. I just want to put a message up here from JW, I think probably from Stub Me Down, a fellow jam band podcaster. Thanks, man, for the wishes. I wanted to the 713, the Mansfield, there's a Reba that's really good from that show that there's like some clapping from the fans, and just the way that the fans are interacting with the music made me think of a theme. Like, is this the peak of Phish fan enthusiasm, this tour? Because you got like tape trading kind of going into the CD world, these tours, the excitement for the millennium, the kind of like, I just feel like Phish fans at this point, myself included, were just so engaged with the band. And it feels like the audience is just, there are those moments that happen on this tour where it's just like the fans are reacting to things in a way that maybe 95 was the peak, maybe 97, but this feels like, it just feels like Phish fans and the band, when they're really hitting it, are like in a different kind of connection.
Yeah, I think if you think about the age of a lot of Phish fans at this point in time, this is kind of peak travel experience. Like, most people I know who saw full tours in 1.0 saw 99. They didn't see 97. They didn't see 95. So I think like there's a certain age of Phish fans that got into Phish post 12/31/95, and now they're at the age where they can totally hit on the road, go and see a bunch of shows. A bunch of people went to Oswego. I think like the dichotomy of it, we've kind of hinted at, but is like, this band has been doing this since 1989. they've been on the road for months of every single year. And they're now at this point where like it is the same amphitheaters and they all have the same corporate names. They all kind of look the same around the country for 25 shows a year. And I've got to imagine there's almost like a hypnotic element to it, to the band. So whereas like the fans are excuse me, the fans are so engaged and they're so like thrilled to be on tour with Phish. Phish has been doing this for 10 years and they are in some ways exhausted. And so you hear that back and forth throughout the overall tour.
It was a really exciting time to be a fan, even those of us that were kind of pulling away a little bit. I was only seeing them a couple times a year at this point, but I think similar to what Larry's saying here, the crowd was so excited because you didn't actually know what Phish was going to be like when they started a new year like this. Like they were reinventing themselves so much that I had no idea when I went and saw them in Charlotte this summer in 99 that it was going to be like this. Like the show was so different from anything I saw in 98 or 97. And so it was a really exciting time. You had to kind of feel like, similar to now, I think too, that people just expect such a level of greatness now, like Larry was saying. But I think then it was like more expecting like something wild to happen. Like Phish was just thrilling back then because they were really inventing themselves over and over again every year. And it was just a really exciting time. And you totally hear that on this tour. The crowd is just so engaged and excited. It's really fun to listen to the audience tapes.
I have to, I just want to say, thank you, Megan. And I just want to say that, I got a secondhand story from Tom about Holmdel that I'm going to tell in a minute, and I don't even think I can do it justice because I've heard pieces of the story, but when he told me the whole story, I was dying laughing, and he's out of the country right now, and I want to make sure I do this story justice, but hold on for a second because it's really amazing. But what else can we? I guess we should do jams. But can I ask a quick question of you guys? Which is, is this Fishman's easiest tour? Like, I feel like he's so much of this. The sound of this tour is just him, like in the pocket,
just keeping it going. Yeah,
I think him and Mike, to a degree, it's. This tour is all to me about Trey's tone and his sirens and the way he dances over the top of grooves. And so I think on the one hand, those grooves are difficult to sustain. And it's something that the band, the rhythm section has to really think about. But on the other hand, like you listen to recent Phish jams and John Fishman is all over the place and everywhere in a way that like blows your mind. You listen to like 1995 or 1997 and like the way that Fishman can evolve in 2 years from this like sporadic jazz drummer to like this just like holding down the pocket funk drummer is stunning. And then here, kind of like the band itself, he's just riding the wave.
Yeah, I think there's some standout jams where they're really listening, but I would say this kind of jamming requires a lot less active listening to each other and responding to each other.
It's a good way to put it.
Yeah. I do think Mike is like out front on some of these jams in a way that's really great and that you don't hear before.
Totally.
Yes.
But like you think about like a 95 jam, like everything changes on a dime. Like they're playing something and then someone plays one riff and they all catch onto it and they move in that direction. Here, like the transitions and changes are like 3 minutes long. And that's really cool in a sense to hear. But like, you're absolutely right, Meg. Like you don't have to immediately hear what Fishman does and transition. You just kind of like ease into it. And so there's this like glossiness that these are great late night jams. Like, my God, I have a memory of listening to the 7:15 Meat Stick into Split Open and Melt into Kung into whatever that jam is afterwards on a bus in Thailand at like 2:00 in the morning. And just the bus driver was driving insane. And this music was just like setting me at such ease and like keeping me in my chair, keeping me deep breathing. Like there is a purpose to that music. And this band taps into it in a really big way.
Well, let's just talk about that because that was on my list of kind of representative jams. And I will say again on Live Bait 9 is the Kung Split Open and Melt jam, which is the soundboard is worth checking out. The Ghost has some, that was like actually the first point I noticed Mike's like lead on that Ghost, but this Meat Stick, Melt, Kung, Jam, and You Enjoy Myself, which is on Live Bait 4. That's it's pretty solid. It's a pretty solid show. But what, Megan, did you get to listen to that segment? Because that whole second set is like 45, 60 minutes or something of just like craziness.
Yeah. It's wild.
jamming.
I love this show. I love this show so much. But I definitely listened to that, and I listened to it again this morning too, because this is really boundary pushing, exploratory jamming. And it's so interesting because it's so mellow and vibey. And then it just gets totally wild. And I think this is one of my favorite Kongs ever. It's just so incredible. And then to return to like a 17-minute jam after, it's just one of those special sets of Phish. And I would love to hear this whole show on soundboard.
The Kung is not like normal. I mean, it's the jam is
No.
it's just totally atypical, and that, I mean, the tempos changes too, or is something that I've noticed a lot. Not to kind of contradict what I was saying earlier about Fishman, but like once in a while they'll just like, they just will push really fast, and you're like, how the hell are they? How are they doing this?
That's what's so weird, and I think maybe speaks to how much fun they were having and that it wasn't so consistent. Like sometimes the jams on this tour are really, really driving and really pushing and like really high energy, and then other times they're just super hypnotic. It's weird.
Well, there's a bunch of to that point, there's a bunch of fluff heads on the jam charts, and one of the notes on all of the write-ups is that the actual composed section is played very slow. And it's like they knew they couldn't nail fluff head as fast as they could 2 or 3 years earlier. So they really take their time getting through it. And the slowness of playing that leads to this elongated arrival on 710, but then, most notably the 32-minute long, just free flowing jam on 724. So like you get this slowness and this groove and this like methodical, let's just like sink into the music. But then you absolutely get these moments like the jam coming out of Kung that is just on fire, or the Birds of a Feather from Columbus that just like rages for 23 minutes and never really leaves Birds, but like figures out how to explore all the terrain around it, just like the Roadrunner, just like tearing away from the Coyote. It's unbelievable stuff. This is a big jamming tour. What should we share some other recommendations?
Yeah, I think at this point, do you mind if I just talk about the Camden Chalk Dust? Because I was going to talk about it I was going to talk about it in the shows, because I think the show is kind of perfect. But so several years ago, Tom asked me to make a list of my top 5 Phish jams. So I did that, and I still stick by it. This is one of them. So like you got this Chalk Dust, and of course at this point they're kind of jamming songs that hadn't gone type 2 before 95 at least, but there are early hints in this Chalk Dust of it going outside the boundaries. Then it goes back to kind of the structure, and then it just hits this point where it's just soaring. And to me, like all 5 of my favorite Phish jams have this common component, which is where it feels completely unplanned and organic. It feels like they didn't really mean to be there, but then they're there. And Mike is complimenting Trey's soloing in this way and Trey's soloing is just perfect. And it's like there's a 4-minute section that I think is like perfect Phish. It's emotional, it's driving, it's a like really beautiful little story that is encapsulated inside of this Chalk Dust, which is just so rare. And I feel like, I think I've said this before, but like something like the Tahoe Tweezer, or even some of those 21 shows that like the Tweezer and the Soul Planet from Shoreline, those to me felt slightly more like planned. Like they knew they were going to jam. Maybe the Ruby Waves from Alpine. Like I think Trey even said like they were gonna jam Mercury that night, but it didn't work. So they like jammed Ruby Waves. This is like the opposite of that. They just find themselves in this thing where like all 4 of them are perfectly connected, and it's just it never gets old for me. And I think it's a really perfect piece of music. So
I couldn't agree more. I think the stuff you said about like the story in the middle of it, it's as if these are leads from Trey that were pre-written, that were preconceived of, and then finally played on stage? Like, how do you come up with those? How do you come up with those types of lines on the fly while you are playing a song that is not supposed to jam, that has always been like 7 to 10 minutes long and very aggressive grunge type rock, classic rock? I share your sentiments. When I launched with my buddy Dave Goldstein, the Beyond the Pond podcast, we talked about 5 jams for our first episode, and there's a reason why we did the Camden Chalk Dust. Number 1, it's one of our favorite jams of all time, and it gets us to that like heavenly state of just like that bliss state with Fish, where anything is possible, and they do things that no other band we've ever heard is capable of doing. But also because listening to it made me think of Broken Social Scene and Brian Eno and the War on Drugs, and stylistically it taps into this kind of heartland rock, synthy Americana churn that I just cannot get enough of. The kind of the ambient undertones that happen throughout the back half of the jam as it segues into reggae. It taps into.
Drop is incredible.
But it's emotional and it's exploratory. It's everything that you described there. It's like if Dire Straits knew how to jam in a way that like I cannot get enough of. I'm so here for it.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say about this jam is Trey's tone in this jam is just so perfect. It's so elegant and it's so hopeful. And I completely echo your sentiments. It's the outro too is so pulsing and you can just feel your heartbeat through it. It's beautiful jam. And it's only 14 minutes, so you can get a lot done in 14 minutes.
It's
Do
incredible.
You find, Meg, that it's like the Wabi Sabi jam where like there's just one flaw and that it segues into reggae, or are you okay with the segue?
I wasn't going to say that. I was listening this morning to the Camden Chalk Dust once again, and when it landed in Roger, I was like, that would have been so much better if it was something else, but it's okay.
Just make it fast enough for you and you're happy.
Exactly. Anything else?
I want to read a Reddit post that was screenshotted in a tweet. You can follow that from Andrew Genser. I'm just going to read this and then we can move on to the next thing. Okay. Fishman in an interview in August 2021. I don't know if any of this is real, but I'm reading it because it's on the internet. I don't know where the interview was from or who was with. He said, every one of our tunes has been my favorite song at one point or another. All you have to do is have a peak experience with any one of them, and then you're like, okay. And he said, funny story, for the longest time, Chalk Dust Torture was a song I had a hard time wrapping my head around, and Trey used to always say, that's like our best song. And I was like, I don't know, man. Which I'm sure Trey said that about a lot of songs.
Every song, yeah, you know it.
But he said and then he says, it's funny because back when you're younger and you're making that album and like the anti-hit band, and then the record companies like now go out and play that song a million times. So whenever there was pressure like that, we always would kind of pull away from that. And then my ex-wife, when she was in labor with our first child, said, I really want to hear the Camden 99 Chalk Dust. And I was like,
That's
really?
Amazing.
And we put it on and it blew my head off. That jam, it reaches the place where, and I remembered it happening and I'd forgotten about it until that moment. It was at that gig where I remember coming off the stage and feeling like, okay, Chalk Dust is my favorite song now. And now it's the kind of thing, if I was trying to turn someone on to Fish, I'd be like, here, this is all you need to know about us. This is some of our best work.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's really special.
Big if true.
Big if true. I mean, I think the best Fish podcast ever would literally just be the members of Fish listening to great Fish jams and then talking about their memories of them.
Totally.
It's like that just like taps into something that I would kill for more of, is just like, do you realize you played this? Like, you, Mr. State Congressman farmer who wears a dress, like, you played this. Amazing stuff.
It's the best when they become fans. Like, when you see them dancing to their stuff, like when you see Trey dancing to like Mike, and or you watch them or hear them react to one of their jams and they're like, wow, that was really cool, man. Like, yeah, like they're fans too. It's really cool. And they get to step outside and appreciate something they've done like that, and that their kid was born to that song. That's wild. Like, if that's not an endorsement, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
That's it.
Megan, I feel like I've been talking a lot. Megan, what do you have in terms of jams?
Well, to no one's surprise, I really love the 7/7 Sally from
Mm.
Charlotte. You know, I just love the ambient looping over the 97 funk. I'm into that. I don't want it all the time, but I'm super here for it. It's hypnotic, it's trance like. I was really into trance music at this time, really into house. I went to this show and I remember this song in the first set, and the first set's wild. It's pretty weird, but you hear this song, and I just remember being like, this is what Fish is doing right now. Like, yeah, I'm here for this. It's also really representative of this tour. And this is a time, a moment when the sound was really successful. I think it's kind of a marriage of the two previous years' sounds. And in this jam, the groove is the destination, and it's cool. It's like that's what they're going for. And I'm into it.
There's a lot of Journey is the destination jamming throughout this tour in a way that
Yeah.
like
Mhm.
the Camden Chalk Dust is almost an outlier where they
Yeah.
achieve what they're trying to do. Most of the great jams from this tour are kind of what you're talking about, where you're living in the space of discovery by doing. That's a really great version. I would love to vouch for the next night's Birds of a Feather 7/8 from Virginia Beach. Another one of my favorite jams from Summer 99. This gets into just a really beautiful ambient space. Every single Birds from Summer 99 is worth hearing. 7/8,
Yeah.
7/10, 7/23. There's a few
Trying to
others.
None
think.
of them on a
7/25.
live bait. Not a single one on the live
Not a
bait.
single one, though you do
Wow.
have 7/10 released on Live Fish, but you're right.
True.
None of them, and 7/23 on Live Fish, but we're just picking nits at this point in time.
Yeah.
This one deserves to be a live bait because I don't know if this full show deserves a release, but you have the fee in the early part of set one that I believe has already been released as a live bait. But this one goes into a Somewhere Over the Rainbow jam that I am very don't come at me with your emotional manipulation. I don't want to hear your ukulele take on Somewhere Over the Rainbow and What a Wonderful World. Like, I'm not here for the Starbucks emotional manipulation. I can't do it. But something about Trey discovering the riff to Somewhere Over the Rainbow deep in this jam, the band slowing down, space everywhere, and then like we get this for like 3 or 4 minutes. It is a spooky and magical moment that I still remember the first time I heard this. It was summer 2009. I was reading Mr. Miner's Fish Thoughts every single morning, and he would post either a show or jam recommendation at the bottom of every essay. I downloaded so many Fish shows I didn't have at that point in time, and I listened to so many jams I hadn't heard at that point in time. I remember listening to this and just like feeling like, I don't really weep, but I felt like I was going to weep. And that is about as like heavy of a feeling as I can have. This jam takes over my heart, my soul in a way that similar to the Camden Chalk Dust, not quite on that level, but like this is just a great example of inventive playing over the kind of sustained groove we got throughout the year.
And
I
I
love
was
how
actually
that
just
jam. Oh, go ahead, RJ.
no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I love how that jam comes out of like an agitated song like Birds of a Feather, and then it becomes
Totally.
so soft and
Oh, it's such a
melancholic.
good point.
You don't expect it. And it's just Fish is saying like those weird lyrics. It has that really kind of, yeah, eerie, soft, gauzy quality to it. It's really beautiful. And I love how it drones out at the end and then it drones into Caspian. And there's like not a more perfect song for droning than Caspian. It's just, I love that. I love
Totally.
that part of the show.
I just wanted to say, I just want to give a plug to that fee. The jam coming out of the fee from
Mhm.
7/8, it's almost like a meat stick like kind of thing. But then
Yeah.
then it's one of those
Mm.
tempo changes. They like push it up tempo out of the jam, and it's like you're on a ride that is really just not expected and really fun and really just it's a really great first set thing that like doesn't really make any sense. I was actually going to bring up
Yeah.
Mr. Miner because I don't think we've talked about him enough on this podcast or in the series so far. So Dave Calarco, great dude, contributed so
Awesome
much
guy.
to the fish community, and his he had a blog called Mr. Miner's Fish Thoughts. You can find it. I think his last post was in 2009. He's still around, but he kind of coined this term millennial sound, which I think is a combination of what you were describing, Meg, and the Sneak and Sally, and what you were describing, Brian, and the Birds, and what I heard in like the Bathtub Gin from 6:30 is like, spacey layered loops, and it starts to kind of evolve and get more sophisticated, I think, over the course of the year. But like he kind of calls that the millennial sound, which I think is a perfect kind of description of it. So thanks for giving us vocabulary, Dave.
Really, really great dude. We had him on Undermine a few times, and he was probably my favorite person to talk to throughout that series, because I could talk to him for 2.5, 3 hours about a single Phish tour and just like dive deep. And he had just like endless philosophical thoughts, and like he could spring to mind like dates and jams, and then just dive deep into the digressions. There was so much left on the cutting room floor that like I would just release as an entire podcast, because the dude he knows his Phish, and he's got a really, really fascinating perspective. Love talking to him.
Yeah, I've read so much of his stuff for research I've done for this show. So appreciate all of his work.
Really formative stuff, especially when it came out, when his blog really went live and Phish was back in 2009. There was a community that built around that was very positive, very engaging. It was kind of the polar opposite of what I was experiencing on Fantasy Tour. I hadn't yet gotten on Phish Twitter. It was just a really cool space there was a lot of tape trading still going on. This was before Re-Listen and the Phish.in app. He was just he had this wealth of downloads and jams that, like, for someone like myself who is getting back into Phish, like you're saying, Meg, having this like resource that you could go to day after day after day that was endlessly curious about the band, it was amazing. Should we share some more jams? There are more jams. I think we're stuck on
a few more each, right?
Do a couple more, and then we'll go to shows. And there's so much more. But go ahead, Brian.
Well, I just want to shout out the 721 Simple Into My Left Toe. The full Mike's Groove should be heard, but the Simple Into My Left Toe is one of my favorite jams the band has ever played. Shout out to friend of the pod, Justin Bruce. I really hope that we've done well by your beloved Summer 99. I hope that you appreciate the honesty, but also the passion. This is probably my favorite segment of music aside from the Camden Chalk Dust from this tour. I'm a huge Cicadus fan. I'm a huge My Left Toe fan. I would love to see them bring this song back in the manner that they've brought What's the Use back and kind of figured out a new life for What's the Use. But this is by far the most extended My Left Toe we've heard. It's about 16 minutes in length, and it gets very drony. It will end up in Prince Caspian, similar to how that Birds of a Feather was, but it's just really emblematic of the overall sound of the tour. Like, at their best, Meg, you said it better than I think anyone could earlier in this episode. The journey was the destination. Like, that was the goal, was let's just get to a space and let's hang out there, and maybe we don't have any sort of end peak that we're reaching, but let's just communicate and see how we're feeling inside, and let's just kind of like float like orbs here within this jam. And so there's a meditative quality to this jam that when I need just kind of like, if I'm writing and I need to listen to Phish, or I want to listen to Phish, this is the type of jam that I will put on. If I'm on a plane and I need to like settle down a little bit, this is the type of Phish that I want to listen to. It's just, it's the kind of Phish that you can almost put on and fall asleep to. And I mean that complimentary, like it floats and exists. And the fact that a rock band who 2 years earlier was playing raging funk, 4 years earlier was playing these cacophonous noise maximalist jams, could get to this level of quiet is really, really impressive and really inspiring.
Yeah, there's not a lot of Phish that you can listen to go to sleep to.
No.
In general. It's not really that good.
Not really there.
No.
Megan, what do you got?
I want to shout out the 723 Ghost set to opener. Just love this Ghost so much. You get the sirens looping like before the song even starts. They're ready to go in. I love this jam too, because it's not like a lot of the others. It's really dynamic. It's really energetic. Tons of like rock star soloing for Trey. And then it lands in a really pretty sweet section at the end. And I love how the looping continues under the intro to Free too. Just a great.
That segue.
Great. Mm-hmm.
Shout out to that segue.
There's a lot of good segues this tour.
Yes.
It really like serves to that.
I will say that this is the show where Trey announces Big Cypress during Meat Stick.
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
continues. I think this is probably the fourth show that he talks about the Meat Stick Jam and the Guinness Book of World Records, and he's just like he
really
just won't
pushing
let it
for it.
go.
I just have to say, you realize, like, we're talking about them being like arrogant and cool. This is when you realize that they are not. They are just dorks who want to be
True.
in the Guinness Book of World Records. Like, who wants to be in the Guinness Book of World Records? Like, these nerds. And Trey's like, we've been trying to get in for a couple ways. We tried to do the naked photo shoot at the Went. Like, we're trying. Like, here we are trying again. It's just dorks.
It's ridiculous, totally ridiculous. And he just won't continue. He just won't stop with his meat stick rants, and you're just like, dude, come on. Nobody cares, but someone does. The next night, this is a kind of an obvious one, but the Fluffhead from Alpine 724 is just into this jam, like you were talking about it earlier, Brian. But it's like 27 minutes in, and they hit another groove, and it feels like it's like an endurance challenge at this point. They're like, they just keep kind of pushing forward, but it doesn't feel like they're slowing down. I mean, I think this is where like the fluctuation in sobriety, kind of like you can hear in different parts. Like some of the shows are just like little low energy, and then you get these parts where it's just like, it's just crazy.
Yeah, and I mean that show more than any other on this tour really showcases the kind of fluctuation of what's happening backstage spilling out a bit on stage. It's a mess of a show. It kind of represents like what I was saying at the start of this episode for me, where I remember going back to shows like this in like 2010 and being like, man, I wish Phish sounded this way still. Like I wish that they could just go on stage without abandon. In 2010 is where you get a lot of like 13 to 16 song first sets where it's just song, and there's a lot of like fishy moments. There's some cool stuff. Maybe you get a 13-minute jam in set 2, but like it's very structured, and it's clear the band had like a lot of guardrails on them so that they wouldn't like that they could rebuild properly. And 99 is the complete opposite of that. And so you get this Fluffhead that just spills out into a brilliant jam, unbelievable jam, like one of the best jams of the overall tour. And then later in set 2, they're just kind of like droning. And hey, here's a Cicatus song. And hey, here's Chalk Dust Torture played way too fast, so our guitarist falls over on stage. Like there's just a lot. But then they like throw at you a bunch of rarities that they won't play again until 3.0. Like there's these weird highs and lows that happen within a single show. And I looked at the set timings of this show. Like it's like 55 minutes both sets. Like they cannot wait to get off stage and go back to the party.
Yeah, that dram is it's so driving, but it's wildly interesting still. Like great textures and noises, and I love how it's 30 minutes long, but it never peaks, and then it just dissipates into The Man Who Stepped Into Yesterday. Yeah, that's a nice song to end with. That's a good landing spot after jam. That's better than Roger.
Okay, so let's do a couple more, but then we should keep moving on to our shows. What else do you guys got?
Just a couple quickly. We talked earlier about Freeze. Like I think the Free from 6:30 is worth listening to. It's about 15 minutes and actually gets into a really cool space. The Mics from 7/9. I don't think that's a very good show, but it's a really interesting Mike song that happens inside of a Mike's twist weak paw groove. And then the Yem from 720 is there's a lot of really good You Enjoy Myself from this overall tour, and that one really stuck out to me as a really big one. Meg, what do you got? I don't want to take all yours.
I have 2 more I'd like to talk about. It's the 723 Birds of a Feather. You mentioned it briefly, Brian, but this is an awesome jam. It's 25 minutes. There's really weird noises in the intro. I think they're playing a sound that just says the word die or something, and Trey's laughing so hard. Die. And Trey can barely even sing the lyrics because he's laughing so much, but they bring that kind of wild energy to the jam. Apparently they're playing during a really big thunderstorm, and it's just wild and thrashing. It's so different than other 99 jams, and there's really great soundscapes. And then the last few moments have like a bunch of momentum. It's just really exciting. I love that jam. And then I wanted to talk about the 718 Oswego Runaway Jim. It's released in Live Bait. 24-minute set 2 opener has such a great momentum. You got Fishman on the wood blocks, really driving again, but still has some of the millennial sound in the last few minutes of the jam. Worth checking out.
I think I just want to talk about the 718 Runaway Jim. It's on Live Bait 5. I don't, the Oswego shows I don't love, but
They're not
there's
that
like
great.
there's some stuff in this is like, it's a little sloppy but really fun, and Mike is on the soundboard version of this jam. You can just hear him driving the whole thing, which is really fun to hear, and it doesn't sound like anything else in this era.
Yeah, Oswego's an interesting touch point, maybe a proper transition into shows, because like this is kind of a festival, but not really. There's like guests that come up on stage, and listening to set 3, because I like the Piper a lot as well. I love the Runaway Jim. I think that's great to shout that out. Like those two just monster jams that kind of take this sound and present it in front of 80,000 people, which showcases that the sound is going to work really well at Big Cypress 6 months later. Like it kind of, to me, hit as, okay, this band knows that they can take this sound in front of a festival. But it's not a festival. And towards the end, like Trey is just, he's attacking classic rock riffs. He's really making fun of the audience in Iculus. And there's almost like it's still playful, but there's almost like a kind of dickish quality to the vibe of this third set that really reminds me or makes me think of like the first true hints of 2.0, where the band will be doing something because they need to be doing it, and they're not always having as much fun as they used to have, and the excitement is kind of gone in a way that even when we were talking about Summer Europe 97 last week, there was this like joy and excitement to be doing what they were doing night after night and rediscovering themselves. And you don't feel that here. So you feel instead kind of like the kind of ugly underpinnings of rock, dude nature kind of starting to gurgle up in a way. I mean, granted, he still wants to get in the Guinness Book of World Records, but he's also like
so much. I just want to show this comment from Macy Taylor. Hey, thanks for checking out the show. Thought the 7/4/99 Ghost into Slave was universally loved. Well, we have our next segment. We're going to talk about don't miss shows, which I think this may be on the list. So I think we will. I think we'll get to this. I really do. Is there anything else we want to talk about before we transition to that?
No, I think we've covered a lot of really, really good jams. I have one jam segment that I'm going to wait for the full show as well. So
great. Okay. So if you're listening, we're going to take a very, very short break. If you're watching, it'll be even shorter. Okay. So let's talk about our don't miss shows of the tour. I guess first, let me just tell this story that Tom told me from Holmdel.
Yes.
Okay. So night 1 of Holmdel, which is the 15th, right? Yeah. So Tom's like backstage, with 2 friends, a man and a woman, and they see in the kind of up toward the like ceiling of the PNC Bank Arts Center that there's like a catwalk up there. That's not, general public, but like because there are people up there, crew and whatnot. So they are able to get up there. So during the first set, the 3 of them go up to this like catwalk area, which is probably like not advisable and kind of dangerous. I think you have to like climb one of those ladders to get up there. It's not like a place that you get to without some effort. So they're going down the catwalk, and during the first set, and then I think the set ends, and then they're kind of like just wandering around up there. They get to toward the end by the stage, and it's set break, and Tom says to his friend, the guy, like, do you have that water? Didn't you have water? Like, do you have some water? Whatever. And the guy's like, no, I dropped it. And he's like, you dropped it? Like, what do you mean? Where did it go? And his friend's like, I dropped it and it hit the stage. It like exploded on the stage. And this is during set break. So, and Tom's like, oh shit. Like basically like all these union guys if we go down the ladder and go back onto the stage, they're gonna like kill us, you know, because you can't like, it's like the one thing you can't do is like drop something on the stage from high above, dangerous, and you know all that. So the second set starts, and the woman he's with, she said she was like a cat. Like every time like Kuroda would like the lights would go off, she would like move a little bit more, and then the lights would come back on, and she'd stop. And then she kept, so she made her way back to wherever they entered, but Tom and the guy were kind of stuck where they were because they're bigger and taller and didn't. But he said that she was like cat like, kind of like in between the lights, like one of those, you know, robbers in a museum or something. So they stay up there for the whole second set. The show ends, and they're like, well, we have to go down, obviously. So as predicted, they go down, and they go down the stairs, and his friend goes first, and then Tom comes down, and they like, as predicted, there's like a big group of like security guys waiting for them because they were like, they knew that they were the ones who like dropped this water bottle, and they were pissed off. So the guy, apparently his friend, like does a like look over their thing and takes off. So it's just Tom. So Tom gets manhandled by like 5 dudes, and they're like dragging him from the stage, like probably to go kick his ass in the alley or something. And like you said, suddenly like Brad Sands comes out of nowhere and jumps in between Tom and the security guards, giving Tom like 1 second. And Tom said he ran, I mean, wish there were photos of this, ran like toward the stage and jumped into the crowd. And like he said, a bunch of beautiful people like caught him and took care of him, and he kind of was able to blend in and leave. So that was night 1. So night 2, I think the band and Tom and like basically people were like planting seeds that Bruce was going to be there because he had a night off from his shows at the Meadowlands. So I think they were like fucking with the fans and saying like, you know, like planning these rumors that Bruce
wouldn't miss tomorrow night. Wouldn't miss the encore.
Yeah, like he's got a night off. He got a night off. He's, you know. And you guys heard the Born to Run encore, you know, when when Trey does this whole thing, and favorite like influenced me so much, and favorite, you know. So Tom is, you know, you guys know Tom gets like really nervous before going on stage, but this is like people think Bruce Springsteen's coming out, but it's really him. So he's even more nervous, and he can't. He's like the lyrics to Born to Run are like, they're hard to remember, and he's like trying to write them out. So he's in like a green room by himself, like the whole time before the show, and basically everyone in the arena, including the crew and the fans, like everyone thinks that Bruce Springsteen's coming out for the encore. So Tom hears Trey do this long intro, you know, like one of my favorite songwriter ever, son of New Jersey, you know, whatever he says. And he opens the door to the green room, and there's like a 2 rows of security waiting because they think that like Bruce Springsteen's gonna walk out of the dressing room. But Tom walks out, and he said that several guys were like, who the hell, like, what the hell's going on? Like, who the hell is this guy? And then they were all like really confused as he's walking through. And then he hears one of the security guys go, "It's that asshole from last night." And then he walks out on stage. He would have done a better job of it, but it's just, I mean, you can't.
Oh, that's amazing.
Really.
Oh my god. I'd heard like different parts of that story, but never like the full thing with it all coming together with the security guard at the end. That is amazing.
I mean, it's just like you could have scripted it better.
Oh man.
So
and that kind of like that is
face hurts.
I know.
That like represents like how special this era still was, because they could do crazy things like that in this like big of a venue where they're still just like rowdy, kind of, they're cast off to the side, like they're not being promoted by like big radio stations and big marketing. Like they're still, it's just like, who the hell is Fish? Have you ever heard them on the radio? How the hell are they selling this venue out? And they can do these sort of pranks like, wow, fucking with security and fucking with venues. That is amazing stuff.
It's ridiculous. Totally ridiculous.
That is awesome.
Amazing.
Well told.
Story.
Well done.
Thanks. Thanks, Tom, for sharing. Okay. Let's do 2 don't miss shows of the tour each. What do you want to start, Brian?
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna go with 713, which is night 2 at Great Woods, which is one of my favorite structured set lists ever. You open the show with NICU, The Curtain, Haley's, right into Roses Are Free, right into NO2, which has a extended outro, which was on the white tape. You have that Reba into Carini that you mentioned earlier, really weird, dark, wild Reba. And then set 2, it's like this perfect encapsulation of where the band was. Wolfman's, Piper, Bug, Mountains in the Mist. The fact that you get 2 ballads back to back and they work. What the hell? Are you serious? Run Like an Antelope, Possum, like you get this kind of classic look back. But then the encore, Scott Morosky comes on stage and plays a cover of Tuesday's Gone, which they just nail it. This is a one-time cover, and this is on a Tuesday evening. They do this random Monday, Tuesday gig at Great Woods. First time playing Great Woods since 1994 or 1995. So like you see this big gap in where Phish was and where they are now. It's kind of this return to their homeland in a way. And you get this just emotional send off in Tuesday's Gone. Just great stuff. But I'll share my second one after you guys go around, because I'm going to get a little emotional and a little bit on my high horse about my second one. So RJ, why don't you go?
I know what your second one is, and I have a question about it. But okay. Well, I do think that 710 is a perfect show. I mean, there's a gin with the I'm a Man jam, which I don't know if we've ever talked about Traffic on this podcast. I'm sure we have in the past, but we should, because Traffic's one of my favorite bands, and like hearing that, great. And there's the Birds that kind of picks up the theme of Chalk Dust and carries it forward, and Fluffhead kind of takes that as well. I feel like this is like the first island show of the tour, and like in terms of landing somewhere amazing.
Beautiful tweezer.
Yeah, the tweezers. I mean, it's a really great show. I just want to say quickly, I don't know if 718 is a must listen show. We kind of talked about this earlier, but Del McCoury, some McCoury's on stage is always awesome. There's a really good Bathtub Gin. The Reba is really nice. There's like nice interplay between Trey and Paige, and then there's this like Trey won't stop talking about the Guinness Book of World Records, and then in between, and then it's like Piper that's just like super fast and super shreddy. And the last thing I want to say about 718, I think this is the first of only 2 times that Trey has talked about Barnes and Noble on stage, both in Iculus, and it's kind of funny because I was at the 20, I think that was Hartford 2010, right, when he did
2009.
the whole 2009. Yeah. Okay. So we were at that show, and I mean, that was really
put
funny,
down your DVD thing.
Yeah. So he, back in 99, he's bitching about TV. It's like, you guys all watching TV. Everyone's watching TV. You need to read more. And then in 2009, he talks about going to Barnes and Noble again, but now he's bitching about iPads and iPods. And I mean, it's just kind of amazing. I guess he really likes Barnes and Noble, like, because he, it's one of the only brands that really shows up in his narrations, in Iculus. So I just want to.
It was kind of
shout out to Barnes and Noble. It was.
Barnes and Noble was kind of like, it was like all the small bookstores had like died. Then they're back now, but like it was all Barnes and Noble. So I think that's.
And he's like, you go there, and they have a guy who can like find anything you want, and you're like, God, this is so late 90s. Like, he's like,
exactly.
They have computers in there. They can like find books for you. Like, Jesus.
It's also notable, like just looking at the stats of this is the first Iculus since 10/31/95. It's 262 shows.
Wow.
Holy crap.
And they will not.
Is that true? Wow.
Net. So if you have an issue with it, maybe take it up with them. Okay. Because according to them, it's 262 shows. We love you, Charlie.
What is the show rated? Oh, we don't know.
We don't know.
This is the last Hiculus until 8/14/2009, as RJ noted, that excellent version from 2009, which is part of the like that show had Colonel Forbins, Iculus, Psycho Killer, like all these big rarities from 1.0 came back. But like, since then, heard it in 2011, 2013, twice, 2019, 2022, and 2023. It's still a rare song, but it is like there was something about this period of late 1.0 into early 3.0 where these songs just seemed dead and seemed like they were not going to be a part of Phish lore or Phish history going forward. And I mean, they didn't play this once in 2.0. It's just like it's wild that this is the last time we would get it until Barack Obama was president. Just incredible.
So back to back Ichilus Barnes and Noble mentions.
Back to back.
Yeah.
Exactly. Probably intentional.
10 years apart.
Yeah. Megan, what do you got?
That's amazing. I have a show that's underrated and much beloved by me. It's 7799 in Charlotte. This is just a quintessential summer 99 show for me. It's not a perfect show. We talked about it in our 40 for 40 series. It's got weird set list calls. The whole set one is just weird, but there is a looseness that leads to some just really cool jams. I think the Sally we talked about, you have one of the only performances of My Left Toe and What's the Use both in the same show. So a fair amount of that like Sick at Disc vibe. But this second set is just, I love it. It's that swampy, looping, psychedelic ambient boat ride, the whole thing. I mean, it opens up with a 2001 9 minutes in before the song even drops. It's just totally weird space stuff. Down with Disease goes into My Left Toe, and then Waiting in the Velvet Sea, back into My Left Toe, Bug, You Enjoy Myself. Just unbelievable second set, really fun, really vibey. And then you have a sit-in the encore that actually works. You've got Derek Trucks coming out to play Possum and Funky Bitch. Again, that kind of throwback feeling and just sounding so great on the slide guitar, which is sit-ins are rare, but when they work, they're amazing.
Yeah. He was 20 at the time, by the way.
Yeah, it's like a child.
Jesus.
And
it was like his 10th year sitting in.
Show.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly. He had been on forever. Yeah. No, I love this show. I was there. I have a special place in my heart for this show. And I think if you want to know what 99 Summer sounds like, I think you should listen to this show.
I think that's a good, like, you get the highs and the lows and the in between in this show in a way that is really representative. Really enjoyed revisiting this for the 40 for 40 series. It sparked some awesome conversations. One of my favorite episodes we did.
Yeah. Brian.
Yeah.
Do you want to go next?
I do. So this show I'm going to talk about is my second favorite Phish show that has ever been played. And it is a show that Kevin Shapiro, you've heard from me on many podcasts about this. 7/25/99. We need the full release, man. This is a classic show. I'm really nervous about the question RJ is going to ask because it may make me contradict everything I'm about to say or question everything I'm about to say, but I will say it anyway. This show begins in a way that almost no other Phish shows start. It is like jam session. Like the meat is so chill as they're getting into it. Trey's just like he's striking the guitar with like a muted chords, so like you just hear them like slowly fading into it, and then it's a groove immediately. My friend fades out into My Left Toe, just an absolutely incredible, beautiful version of My Left Toe. That then goes into Whipping Post. I got to check my stats here, baby. This is the first Whipping Post since August 10th, 1996. And the first to feature Trey on vocals for the first time since September 21st, 1990, 846 shows. If you know anything about me as a Phish fan, you know that the 11/23/85 Whipping Post is one of my seminal moments in this band's history. So hearing the aggression with which Trey sings Whipping Post, apparently him yelling at friends and family for the way that they were upset with him for his partying the night before. Who knows if we'll ever get the bottom of the story, but like the murky details are wild.
Good theory.
Goes into Makasupa, which then has a happy birthday to Chris Kuroda. He gets his own lighting solo. Saw It Again. We're going to throw just random Phish songs out there. That is one of your best like mid-set one random Phish songs you can get. 10-minute Boogie On, and then a Cavern. Like this is a perfect first set. Capital P, capital E. I won't spell the rest of it for you, but oh my God, this is a perfect first set. And then what do we get in set two? Usually, oftentimes, we'll get a high energized, rarity filled, weird off structure set one, and then set two will kind of be a little bit of a dud. It's happened a lot throughout 3.0. It happened even in 1.0. But here instead, we come out, we get this beautiful Birds of a Feather jam that kind of fades into a little bit of quiet, builds back up into a peak, goes into Walk Away, another rarity, rare mid-set 2, Run Like an Antelope with extended segment in between, Susie Greenberg with a 10-minute Susie Greenberg, 10 minutes. Oh my God. And then we go into Hold Your Head Up with a Purple Rain, absolutely classic Purple Rain, the first time since August 6, 1996, 210 shows. You Enjoy Myself closer, and a Loving Cup that has an extra 90 seconds of jamming where the band just builds off of the overall theme of the song and kind of stretches out into a droney fashion. Yes, I just went through every single song in the show because every single song in the show is worth noting, and it's a show that should be celebrated and encased in live Phish soundboard quality for all to hear and all to discover themselves.
Wow. I can't really say anything now because that was too good. I think because of the way that I do these preps, I think by the time I got to this show, I was like, all right, like I'm 19 shows into this tour, and I've heard just about like everything. I've heard like I got the millennial sound, I'm good. I got the loops.
I got
the.
You do get a little tired towards the end of the tour. I will admit, yeah.
I think when I was listening to it the other day, I was thinking like, all right, this is good. Like I do think the set list is great. I think it's all well played. It's fun. There's a little bit of everything. I think that I think there are better shows on this tour, I guess, is my personal take. And I've listened to the show many times, mostly because of you. And I support your $725.99 habit. Like I'm there for it. And if they release it as an archival release, like there's no question who gets all the credit for it. But I think by the time I got to it, I was like, okay. But I don't know if it's the best show of this tour. So to me,
would you put 710 over it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that there's a case for that.
I don't think 710 is as much of an experience though. There's good jams throughout 710. I think the Wilson opener of 710 like really sets the stage into that Chalk Dust, into Rogue. But then there's like, Back at the Chicken Shack, Sparkle. There's some like
some dulls. Yeah.
There's some dull moments. Yeah. But I do think I appreciate how much you love this show.
I will say, just as a quick caveat, like I do think that like a lot of the great shows that we will discuss, or that we could discuss in say like summer 2000, they're better heard in isolation than along the course of the tour. You don't get the same. We're just so used to now, as a tour evolves, like the band's sound tends to change, and we tend to hear a really, really shocking jam late in a tour that has hints of what happened before, but is also a brand new concept and a brand new idea. I think that happened throughout last summer, where like by the end of MSG, you were hearing new sounds and new ideas that the band was putting forth. I don't think you get that as much in 99. So I think that like this is a type of show you listen to in isolation just because you throw it on. But now I'm giving you caveats and justifications for my second therapist show ever. And I'm not going to do that anymore because my God, this show just needs to be released so I can stop saying on every freaking podcast I go on.
I will say it's my favorite first set of the tour, for sure.
Okay,
that's the first set of this show is like unbelievable. Just 25 minutes of just boom, just out the gate, like abstract jamming, segues, just perfect. I like the first set.
What do you want?
A lot.
What more do you want? You want an intro? You guys want a couple songs to set the table? I don't need that.
Yeah,
maybe you guys.
No, it's my favorite first set. I don't know the whole show. I don't know, but yeah,
I could pick. I could nitpick a little bit, but I'm not going to do that because we're in the spirit of celebration. And Brian, I just want them to release it for you.
It is your birthday week. And I will say, I don't think there's any show on this tour that's perfect from start to finish.
I think that's fair. I think that's true. I think that's true.
You don't have
I said this and 710 come closest. They're the two kind of like anchoring points of the tour. I want to just talk about 7-4.
Well, to that point,
what
would you change about the? What would you change about this show? Now that you've said like that it's not perfect, what would you change about it?
Let me pull up the set list. I mean, the second set does open with that Big Birds of a Feather. That's really good too. Although I didn't love that jam that much, I have to say. It was okay. I just didn't find it super, super interesting, that Birds.
It's going up against a lot of really good Birds as well. So I think
I just feel like it didn't stand out as like the best Birds of a Feather. I love a Purple Rain, Hold Your Head Up moment. Like that's so 1995 to me. I love that throwback moment. But, I don't know. Walk Away, Antelope, Susie. I don't know. I'd probably change that. I feel like I'm breaking Brian's heart on his birthday week, and I feel bad about it. I'm going to stop.
Brian, this is a great show.
It's a great show. Let's just leave it there.
If we could see the ratings on Fishnet, we would know that it is like it's a well-rated show, but we don't know. I want to just talk about.
There's a hack to find out the ratings. Do you know that? There's a hack. If you go to the top-rated lists and you look it down, you can see what everything's rated on the top-rated shows, but it's not going to show up when you pull up the show individually. So there is a hack. Yeah.
Wow.
I will say as well, as I'm just looking at the jam chart versions, there are
still talking about the show.
There are 8 jam charted versions from this show on Phish.net, and they have left 2 jam charted versions off, so there are technically 10. Also, this show peaks with debuts in 1988. The average debut of this show is 1990. This is as classic of a Phish show as that you could ask for from a set listing standpoint. But you're right. I don't want a second song Walk Away when I could trade it for like a second song Son of a Mule. I don't want like a elongated, crazy Run Like an Antelope middle of second set, and I could instead get, I don't know, like Friday right there. That would be pretty good right there. I think you're probably right. I don't want a 10-minute Susie Greenberg. Why would you want a 10-minute Susie Greenberg,
Oh my God. Okay. 7-4 is the other one more. I want to talk about. To Macy Taylor's point earlier, 7-4-99, I think it's good. I found this show kind of emotional in a way. I think there's a Bowie in the first set that does not fall in that category, but the Bowie, the set closer, that it kind of hit me when I was listening to this. Like, it's why the late 90s is so different. They could really do anything. Like, it's like the jamming is like melodic, but it's kind of like choppy, but it's also like kind of quiet and patient, but also really fast at times. Mr. Miner, another one of the things that he talked about was fast-paced abstract psychedelia, which like I feel like this Bowie kind of falls in that category. And the Ghost is like the second set Ghost opener is slow. It's kind of like it's much more slowed down, and then like it just segues into this Slave that's really kind of it's almost like a Beneath a Sea of Stars kind of vibe. I think it's a little bit like emotional, it's a little bit like melancholy, but it has this like great peak, and then you get the debut of What's the Use, which kind of really captures 99, this millennial sound. And I was thinking back to the conversation, my first interview that I did with Trey in 2018, when we talked about What's the Use, and getting to talk to Trey about being in the audience during What's the Use and hearing people like at Magnaball was one of the most memorable moments, when it was like completely silent, and this song this song makes it's just obviously they hear it from the stage, but they can see that too. But I don't know if you remember, like I remember at Magnaball being able to hear people's feet like shuffling on the ground during What's the Use, because it was so quiet.
Amazing.
Well, and they played it 3 weekends in a row. They played it. I saw it at Alpine, Merriweather, and Magnaball, and you could hear them like returning to it because they loved the space they were getting into, and they got into this silence. This was the last set of Magnaball. They get into this silence that you're describing, that like that song changed right during that performance. Like they finally figured out, and ever since then, it's been a regular part of the rotation, and it gets to that silent place. But that's all that happened late set 2 of night 3 of Magnaball. Just a really special moment.
Oh my God.
So
That's,
I
one of
really
my
like the
all-time
show.
favorite Fish songs. And hearing them do that at MSG is one of my favorite things that can happen of all time.
That is
Yeah.
It's the
tapping into the
best.
99 sound in a way. Like there are so many
Yeah.
songs that like carry different sounds of the band forward. And that whenever they play it, you're transported right back to this era of Fish.
I
Yeah.
love this. I love that show too. The Yamar too is so
Yeah.
cool. It's so like drifting and chill. It's so trance-like. And yeah, I absolutely love this show. I think it's really has some such strong moments, and it's also just quintessential 99 sounds. So much of it.
What else does anyone have one? Brian, you did too. I did too. Megan,
I
did
did
you do
too.
too? You have one more?
Megan's
I
got one
think
more.
I only did one. Yeah. So, I'm kind of torn because I really love the 7:15 Homedale show. We talked about that a little bit. I love the set too is just, I think, perfect Fish. It's so much fun. But I do kind of want to give a shout out for Sloppy 99 Fish with 724. I just love how this show has like this wild first set that's just so crazy
Yeah.
with this like opens with Gaiuti. I mean, come on, into a 30-minute fluff head. The man who stepped into yesterday. It's so cool. And then there's like a jam after Vinu Makenu, the man who stepped into yesterday again, and then a jam. And then the set two we've talked about is Tweezer Catapult Mango song, which is the worst version of the song probably ever. But then the jam is so good. And then it goes into like the Happy Whip and Dung song, which is the debut. And just this set is like wild, wild Fish. And then the encore is 4 songs. It feels, it's like that when you're kind of like out and you're having an amazing time and you maybe like drinking too much and things are like either going to be like amazing or really bad. And I kind of like that. It's like kind of right on the edge.
Yeah.
It is.
It's wild.
It is very much the. I remember this in college. Like you'd have 2 really fun nights out with your friends, and everyone would be like, "Can we rally for a third night?" And the third night either is going to be epic, or everyone's going to get 2 beers in and just be like, "I can't do this anymore," and just go to bed.
Yeah.
And this kind of is like towing that line of like it's the epic side of it, where like you can continue going, you can keep partying, you can keep going forward, but you can just tell they're a bit groggy in a way that I think is really fascinating on tape. There's no Fish show like this show. It's almost like a
Yeah,
2004
like
show, but with a little bit better playing.
Mm.
It had to be so disorienting to be at this show. What you're talking about, like the Gaiuti opener, and then Fluffhead, you got these 2 massive compositions, and then a jam, and then let's go back to Man Who Stepped In Yesterday. It's wild, it's weird. There's no flow to it in a lot of ways, but it also flows really nicely. I don't know. I'm deeply fascinated by the show, and I would love a sit down interview with the band just about this show.
You would have to have them listen to it. I know they probably don't remember it. I mean, they definitely don't remember it. I would, if I had.
They definitely remember the Fluffhead because they opened up 2022 Alpine with 1999 into a Fluffhead jam that was always seen as like a nod back to when they jammed out Fluffhead in the second slot at Alpine 99.
Well, I would say that someone reminded them.
Someone did. Someone said you did this one.
Sure.
And then,
but still, that's kind of a cool thing to kind of a good throwback. Okay, so thank you everybody for watching this. Brian, I wanted to talk about you said 725 is your live Fish release. Megan, do you have one, Megan?
Yeah, it's 7/7.
Okay, 7/7. All right.
It's not going to happen, but I just like it. I would like it to be.
Yeah, I'm kind of like I wonder why Oswego hasn't been released, but maybe they're just, saving a lot of these for a rainy day. But I think having those 2 shows would be pretty great. Just
nice.
For the experience of it.
I think if they ever were to release a compilation of jams from a tour in Soundboard, kind of like how they're doing the LP on LP releases, but like just release a 6 CD compilation of jams from a single tour, this would be a very good tour for it.
That would be cool.
Wouldn't that be like just throw that on
Yeah.
and just, basically like live baits on CD? I would totally buy that. The other 2 shows I had though were 713 and 715. I think that there are a couple shows that should be heard in better sound than we currently have them.
7:15 would be my second vote for sure. Yeah. I mean, I think there's, like we were saying, there's not really a perfect show from this tour. So I think they have two of the best already, released. So I think, yeah.
I would go
like you were saying, Brian.
7-4 in addition.
7-4, yeah.
I would argue that the release of 12/2/95 means that they are not concerned with a perfect show for a soundboard release.
It's true.
Good tweezer. Really good tweezer.
Very good tweezer.
Okay, can we talk about our next episode real quick?
Yeah, can we, before we do that, can we share our big takeaways from this tour?
I guess so. I thought we've already heard them. We've already heard them all.
Yeah, okay, I have something I want to talk about that we didn't.
I just have one thing I think that it's important to share.
Brian, you go first.
No, you go first.
I think that my takeaway is just 99, listening to it as a whole, this whole tour, it just feels like maybe it's just too much to try to do this every year, to try to reinvent themselves every year. I think that felt so intense with the addition of like personal challenges that they were going through. They're trying to reinvent the wheel while not being in a great spot personally. I think they hold themselves to such a high creative standard. And now they have like the lifestyle and the partnership to be able to do that successfully. And they're on the other side of like a breakup and time off. I just don't know if you can maintain stamina and like wild creativity if you're not sober at least part of the time or most of the time. I think that the level of musicianship that they kind of expect of themselves is hard to do when you're having this much fun.
I think that's very fair. I think to add to that, my other takeaway is that the 09 to 12 rebuild was so essential. I kept thinking about that while listening to this tour, that like, I love this tour. I love the sound of this tour. I can get lost in so many of these jams. But if this is the end point for Phish, we've lost this other chapter that has become so defining of who this band is today, that they were able to figure out a way back to this kind of extended jamming while doing it in a healthy manner, while doing it in a manner that is productive, that is positive. And this being essentially the start of the final chapter of Phish, I think would have done their legacy a big disservice in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, how to transition? We got to transition because to everyone's, I think everyone, like Phish in 99, everyone needs a rest. So we're gonna take next week to rest. We're all gonna rest. We're actually gonna be. I mean, my kids are on spring break, so I'm not gonna be resting. But we have.
Yeah, I'm not gonna be resting either, but that's okay.
There's actually no resting, but we're gonna come back in 2 weeks on Wednesday, April 3rd at 5 p.m. Eastern with a live show that is going to be. We're all going to play different instruments, and we're going to recreate the 4/3/98 Roses Are Free live on chat in celebration of the anniversary of the Island Tour. Just kidding. But we're going to be doing our next draft episode. And
yes!
There's going to be us three.
So excited.
Fucking wait.
2 more. There's going to be 5 of us. Matt is coming back for this because we're going to be drafting. Brian, what are we drafting?
We are embarking on what is going to be a journey here. We are drafting tweezers. So we have tweezers separated into 9 categories. We will have 5 of us. We are going to be drafting 45 tweezers. Unbelievable stuff. I'm so excited. I don't think that there's a way that anyone can screw this up, because there are a lot of good tweezers, and we'll get into like how we decided the options here. But I think it's also going to get really competitive, because I think we all have a lot of tweezers that we hold dear, and a lot of eras of tweezer that we hold dear. And this will test our friendship in a really, really fascinating way. But I'm excited for this. This will be our first time. We did Phish Years back in January. This is our first foray into jams. If this goes well, hey man, the possibilities are endless we can keep doing drafts going forward. So very, very excited about this. Our last draft episode is one of my favorites we've done.
I'm so excited. I can't wait to defend my crown.
Megan's gonna have to defend her crown, but she's gonna have a new opponent, a person who
I'm nervous.
Who called himself the tweezer expert. So, we're this is getting serious, and you'll see some comments from us over the next couple of weeks as we lead up to it, because we're all pretty fired up. Brian, can we release the list of tweezers that we'll be drafting so that people can listen along?
Yeah.
That's a good call. Yeah. Why don't you release the list, and then I'll just say, so I'll say this again at the episode, but I went through the fishnet jam chart and I capped it at 13 minutes because I wanted to get to a point where you get really exploratory, and even that was almost too many. I had to really mess around with the categories that we're going to be drafting within and how we've organized this. So there's a lot of really good options here, but there's also there's a lot of good tweezers that some of us won't get. That's just the reality of it. That's the reality of the order of the draft. So release the list so people can check it out.
How many are there total?
Let's see. I don't know exactly how many.
My heart is racing right now, and we're like a week and a half away. I'm already nervous.
There's probably close to 100 versions, right?
Something like
that.
There
has to be.
Yeah.
So
there's about 15 for each category. So it's a lot.
And for those of you who didn't, we got some comments on social media when people were voting last time, because people were like, why didn't you just choose 97, 98, and 99? Because that's not how it works. So we'll have to reiterate the rules, but we'll do that. We'll do that on the episode.
Yeah, by having categories, we allow people to have to make very difficult choices and then makes very serious sacrifices, like serious sacrifices. You can't have everything. You can't have 297 tweezers. But I will say that 2 years in fish history get a category all to themselves. So there's a couple that are grouped together, but there are 2 years that there are so many good tweezers that we had to just separate them as their own isolated categories, which is what brought us to this insanity of nine categories of tweezer. We're going to 9 rounds of drafting. This is going to be awesome. This is like the NFL draft.
It's going to be so fun.
It's going to take all day, but we're going to start on April 3rd at 5 p.m. live. It's going to be a lot of fun. Okay, I think that's it. Anything else anyone wants to say?
No, we'll be back with continue this series in mid-April with our we're getting into the teens. So yeah, tweezer draft on deck. Then we've got a few more. We're going to continue to look at great tours, and then we got the Sphere. Everyone who's going to Vegas in April, it's like less than a month now. It's crazy.
It's crazy. It's going to be wild. Okay. Well, we've taken a lot of your Saturday, and for those of you listening, appreciate you listening. And for those of you who are live, thank you for watching. And thank you for the reminder, Brian Tompkins. Please review us on Apple Podcasts. It helps people discover the show. All right. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.